What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the end of the week for 7th of February 2026. It is I, Morgan Houston, aka Whiskey Mo, the internet's least famous academic, and we are here to talk about national security and international relations, what has happened this week, some stories that I am following. I am excited to be here and to talk national security for the average American. I have 4 stories for you this week, 2 that are fairly important, 1 of maximum importance, and then 2 at the end that are important-ish. So let's get into it. First off, story number one is the United States has decided that they are going to let the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty expire. And it expired on February 5th, 2026. This was a treaty that limited the number of nuclear warheads that both Russia and the United States maintained at about 1,500. It was an arms control treaty. This treaty was designed not only to reduce the number of strategic warheads that both countries maintained, but also allowed for monitoring of those warheads, the tracking of movement of those warheads, as well as the notification of some of these things, as well as a bilateral organization where there was discussions about treaty implications and those kinds of things. The president said that he decided to have this treaty end and that he would like to discuss something that was going to last longer. This one lasted for approximately 10 years. It was the second start that we had. And the president has also stated that he would like to include China in the discussions. There are 5 acknowledged nuclear powers in the world. That would be the United States, Russia, China, the UK, and France. There are 4 other nuclear powers, that is Israel, Pakistan, India, and North Korea. This has had some interesting implications as we discuss for some issues surrounding extended deterrence and possible nuclear sharing. But it's a pretty big deal that the United States decided to end this treaty. I believe it's around 30 years of arms reductions treaties that has now officially ended with the expiration of this treaty. So that is a pretty big deal. It'll be interesting to see what the future holds. Second story is that the U.S. Southern Command got a new commander. The Southern Command has been a bit of a hotbed. It has been the command that has been operating the drone strikes in the Caribbean and around Venezuela. So the most recent commander had retired, and I believe the vice commander will also resign as well. So we are now getting General Francis Donovan has been promoted to full 4-star general and commander of U.S. Southern Command. Donovan is a former infantry reconnaissance and special operations officer in MARSOC. He has led at the MEF level, the reconnaissance platoon. He was the executive order of Detachment 1, which was the initial command, the initial unit of MARSOC before the Raider Regiment became what it is. He was, up until this point, he was the vice commander of Special Operations Command, which is the functional command over all U.S. Special Operations Forces. He's a very extensive resume. I think this is a really good fit. It will be interesting to see what happens in the near future with this. He, from everything that I have read, he's a Marines Marine, and he is a fairly solid leader. He's led at every level, and I think this is a really good choice for SOUTHCOM. But we'll talk about it when we get to my commentary. But I think this is a really important position to fill. So we'll discuss it later. The third story involves the U.S. Air Force Academy, USAFA, as the cadets like to call it. The Secretary of the Air Force, Troy Mink, has announced that the superintendent is going to depart. Recently, the Colorado Springs Gazette has reported that a climate survey had come out with some pretty horrendous numbers, mostly among the civilian faculty. And there was a lot of issues around concerns about losing the best of the best when it comes to the faculty, the civilian faculty. It felt like the actual climate survey stated that a lot of this had to do with factors outside of the academy, outside of the faculty itself, and it felt like they felt like they were going to be gaining more. They had not replaced a lot of faculty who had retired, especially among engineering and aerospace, which is really disconcerting for the Air Force Academy, considering that is what the majority of their graduates graduate in, and that supports the force. The Secretary of the Air Force did say that graduates should have a higher level of technical training. It's really important that everyone who graduates have a solid technical background, and this is something that he said to the Air Force Academy's Board of Visitors in D.C. This is not the first bit of controversy that the Air Force Academy has had in its history. There's a long line of them. This one is fairly mild compared to some of the others, but as of right now, after General Bauerfeind, I hope I'm saying that right. It's Bauerfeind. General Bauerfeind retires. There isn't a set replacement yet. Also, the Commandant, Brigadier General Gavin Marks, will be retiring as well. None of the replacements have been stated, and who knows what the future is going to hold for these positions. But the service academies are really important when it comes to the creation. They do only commission a small amount of the officers of each branch, but they do set the table for a lot of things, so I will be watching this with interest. The fourth and final story that we have to cover has some really interesting points to it. I'll get to it more when we get into my commentary, but the Dutch Queen, the Queen of the Netherlands, Queen Maxima, has joined the country's army as a reservist. 54-year-old has chosen to register now because our safety can no longer be taken for granted, according to a statement released on Wednesday. That was the 4th of February by the Dutch royal family. This is not that uncommon for for royal family members to serve in the military. Currently, I believe her daughter is serving. Yes, her daughter just recently finished military training. She's being promoted to corporal. One of the princesses of Spain is currently serving in the military, and famously the male members of the current British line of succession have all served. The current king, both princes have served, with Prince Henry famously serving 2 tours in Afghanistan, and he touches my heart as being a former JTAC. So I love that. So this is interesting, though, in the fact that as a 54-year-old woman, she has decided that she is going to join the reserves of the Dutch army. And as always, the stories I reference will be down below in the description if you want to read these. They're some fascinating stories. I find a lot of this interesting. Now on to my commentary. I think we'll start off first with the most important of this START treaty. There's a lot of concern right now with what is going to happen with nuclear weapons. As I talked about last week when we talked about the National Defense Strategy, how I do believe that the U.S. needs to modernize its nuclear force. It is something that is really important that needs to be taken care of. But at the same time, there were negotiations for New START to continue for at least a year, and there are some discussions now for this treaty to continue to be informally adhered to. But even though I think there are some legitimate concerns surrounding arms reductions and arms reduction treaties, including China, while we could have continued to work on that, while we would have kept this treaty intact. A lot of the experts on nuclear security are stating that they're not concerned about Russia right now building more warheads. I am also not as well. The war in Ukraine has been an expensive proposition for the Russian government. But the thing that gets me that I am very concerned about is the monitoring aspect of this. What is going to happen? How are we going to monitor these warheads? There is actually a stipulation in the treaty that allotted for notification of when warheads were being moved, and I'm very concerned about the impact of the reduction of this. And there are some experts who are concerned about the possibility of a new arms race about skyrocketing nuclear warheads. And the U.S. cannot afford to go head to head to spend against both China and Russia when it comes to nuclear warheads. Our economy is not built the same way, especially when it comes to China that has a command economy where the government essentially can run it. We already have massive issues. The U.S. military needs to modernize in general, and just modernizing our warheads now is estimated to cost $1 trillion. Now, to most people, that money is no big deal. The Defense Department spends ungodly amounts of money when it comes to spend, and some of it's just lost to the ether. People can't seem to find it, as the DoD has never actually passed an audit. But I do believe that that's a concern. I don't think an arms race is good for global security. It just breeds instability. And then there's also the concerns about extended deterrence. So the idea of extended deterrence is that in exchange for not developing nuclear weapons, American allies in Europe and the Pacific would expect that the threat of American response is what would keep adversaries from attacking them with nuclear weapons. With the release of the National Security Strategy, the National Defense Strategy, and the comments of the president, there are many, especially within Europe, who are really concerned about what the state of extended deterrence looks like. And this led to an agreement back in the fall of 2025 between France and the UK about nuclear exchanges and nuclear weapon sharing. There's discussions and pieces being written about how the Nordic countries need to gain nuclear weapons. I'm sure Poland and Hungary would not be opposed to getting them now if there's no guarantee of U.S. extended deterrence. So the end of this treaty is not a small thing. I think it's really important that we look at it. I think, one of the things with the United States, and we as the nation has built this standard, is that we were the big bad boy on the block, and we would protect our friends from the other big bad boy on the block, and that would be mostly Russia, but now also China. But now, as we are downplaying the idea of these nations being competitors, and that we will only deter through strength and not through promises, and there's questions about support, about the U.S. coming to the aid of its NATO allies, this is really going to change the way that we look at deterrence, at nuclear security, and about treaty obligations. Next, the second story. There is a lot to this. The only reason that SOCOM needed, not SOCOM, Southern Command, SOUTHCOM needed a new commander is because the previous commander had retired. There were some rumors swirling about why he retired, and it seemed to be centered around the boat strikes. There's questions about the legality of the Caribbean boat strikes. Anti-narcotics has always been a mission of SOUTHCOM and SOCOM, but there's the danger of overextending the use of the U.S. military. So I think that General Donovan, which great name, by the way, for those of you who don't know, General Wild Bill Donovan was the founder of the OSS, the predecessors to the Army Special Forces. So I always love a General Donovan name. It's a solid name. But I'm interested to see where he stands. Generally speaking, I find most special operations officers across the board to have high integrity. And so I'm really pulling for General Donovan to succeed. And I think it's really important that we have commanders in our chain of command who are not just yes men. And this goes across the political spectrum. I think as military members, this was including myself, I think it's really important for us to understand that we take our oath to the Constitution and not to a political party or to a leader. So it is our responsibility to tell someone no from time to time. Sometimes I think we need to understand, and we need to tell those above us that, no, sir, this is an illegal order, or no, sir, there's some legal questions that I would like to have answered. Give me some time to work this out with my legal team. So I'm hoping that we can get to that. I really dislike seeing the idea of yes men, and I don't think anyone is right now. All things being equal, it seems that most of the general staff are very much in that mold. So here's good luck, General Donovan, as you take on Southcom. Congratulations on the promotion, and I wish you all the best of luck. The third story, this was a little bit personal to me, not because I'm an Air Force Academy graduate. I'm not. I was an enlisted man, so but I do have young men that I have mentored who have either graduated or getting ready to graduate from the Air Force Academy. And the Academy sets the standard, and it's always had its little bit of edge of trouble. And I'm not a fan of any kind of controversy surrounding the Air Force Academy. So I think, unfortunately, right now, the Academy is caught in between two places. You're seeing the administration have a bit of a war on higher ed. And as someone who works in higher ed, it is something that has been very concerning to me already. Secondly, you have the kind of interesting struggles of what the DOD is facing with a new leadership in Secretary Hegseth and President Trump. And so I think it's being caught between both, because the Air Force Academy does have a mission to educate young future officers, and it does grant bachelor's degrees, mostly bachelor's in sciences. And it's concerning when your faculty has such a negative reaction in a climate survey. I know for our climate surveys at my institution, sometimes there's just people who are going to complain, right? I'm one of them. I'm a complainer, but I'm also going to try and put solutions. So I think the inclusion of civilian faculty is really important, because unfortunately, military faculty are just not going to have the time to be at the forefront of their field always. They have military duties, and a civilian academic can be at the forefront of their studies, of their field, be that political science, aeronautics, engineering, physics, any of those things. And we should be striving to recruit the best and the brightest into our service academies, because we are not a bunch of conscripts who just need to hold a rifle and shoot. I want my warriors to be scholars. I want them to be smart. I want them to understand what Sun Tzu said. I want them to understand what Clausewitz said, and then to debate that and ask, is Clausewitz correct? Do we need new grand strategy? I don't just want people who are tactically proficient. That is important, and it's the foundations, but we also need people who are strategically minded, because these are the people that are going to be leading our force in the future. So I really hope that USAFA can get things fixed. I hope that we can get things squared away, and that hopefully going forward, the U.S. Air Force Academy continue to produce top-notch officers that are going to lead our young airmen into combat in the future. Now, the fourth story, which is I kind of included it as kind of a joke, but as I started thinking about it, and this is why I wanted to include it, is because I think what this is showing is one of the kind of positive side effects of the way that the president continues to talk about our allies in Europe. One of the things that's really important is I do agree with the national. I said this last week in the National Defense Strategy Review. I've said this before, and I'll continue saying it. I do agree that Europe does need to increase its burden sharing when we talk about the cost and the risk when it comes to the alliance. I don't necessarily think it has to be like everyone has to contribute the exact same thing. I actually don't have a problem with the way that it has been executed in the past, and that smaller nations will produce small amounts of regular troops, but they will become experts in a niche field that the Americans may not have access to, or it staves the American forces from having to replicate those type of capabilities. But I do think that this is a good thing, that it shows the Danish people in which, the Netherlands is a really cool place. I've been there. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time there. And I think them seeing that their queen takes this seriously enough to raise their hand and say, choose me, and to go, and even in as a reserve duty, and she's going to become a lieutenant colonel right away. Now, I think that's fair. She's probably got a lot of leadership experience. She's going through the training. She's going to be capable. So I think that's going to be really interesting. And I'd like to see, I'm going to keep track. This is one of the things that I'll probably keep track as kind of a through line throughout the time of this administration, is how our European allies are going to continue to increase their share. Now, I think why this is kind of disconcerting at the same time is because there's concerns that the United States is going to fulfill their treaty obligations, which is always disconcerting because the only time that Article 5 of NATO has been activated, which is the clause that states an attack on one is considered an attack on all, and the only time that was ever activated was after the 9/11 attacks. And the Dutch have, or not the Dutch, sorry, the Danes have, it is the Dutch. Yeah, that is the Dutch. Danish is oh man, sometimes they get confusing. The Dutch, the Netherlands they've done they sacrificed. So I think it's really important. But you do see some of the good ends coming from this, with Germany increasing their defense spending and their capabilities. They've actually deployed troops forward for the first time. They now have a permanent presence in Poland, in Lithuania. The only ones I do have some concerns about the Southern European nations, predominantly Italy and Spain. But with the UK and France and Poland and Germany, I think that we are on a good trend. But I think that we need to tone back the rhetoric. I think we need to engage and say, yes, we demand, but we want to work with you. We demand more burden sharing, but we want to work with you. We want to make sure that we are the most capable alliance, that no one would dare attack us, and that if you do, we're going to decimate you in all of that. So that is the end of the week for February 7th, 2026. Thank you, as always, for joining me. I ask that you gently caress that like button if you found value in this. If you think someone else would learn something or has something to say about the topics that I've covered, please feel free to share. If you want to know when this comes out, which is every Saturday at 12 p.m. Mountain Time, you can hit that bell button, get that big bong going, that gong sound of the bell to let you know that a new episode has dropped. I hope that you have enjoyed. If you have a comment, or if you would like to agree, disagree, or suggest future topics, please get in the comments below. Leave me a message. Every comment is appreciated. Every like and subscribe is very much appreciated as well. And I hope I will see you again at the end of the week.